but as a person, where I fell on that emotional Richter scale. And from a very, very, very young age, from the age of about 9, I was a 3rd grader. And at the time, I was living in this little town of Ashland, Oregon, which is near the California border. It's this little tiny theater town, a great place to live as a kid. But if you're growing up in Ashland in the late 60s, early 70s, we were either blessed or cursed, depending on how you look at it, to only have one television channel. And so, because of that, you just watch whatever's on. And so as a little kid, I watched some weird television. And I watched this movie that really haunted me for years, and it really informed the kind of storyteller and the kind of writer I would become. And it was this movie, your typical ABC movie of the week, and it was this movie called James at 15. Does anyone remember this movie? It's James at 15 was a critically acclaimed drama that became a critically acclaimed series that was knocked off the air after 4 episodes. So no one remembers this but me. And it was a very simple love story. It was about this boy pining away for this impossible girl, and he gets the girl in the end, in this totally benign 70s kind of way. Like, you know, it's not Melrose Place, and it's not the Jersey Shore. Very, very simple love story. But James at 15 didn't end there. James at 15 ended with this scene where he and his family are packing up and moving to Boston. And so it ends on this scene that I'll never forget, where they've got the U-Haul packed, and James is in the back of the all-American wood panel station wagon that we all used to drive. And he's waving out the window to his sweetheart, who's on the corner waving back. And the car pulls away from the curb, and it just drives on down the road. And there was this sad piano music. The credits just started to roll. And that was the end. And I remember watching this movie and this ending as a little kid and just thinking to myself, oh, love sucks. This is horrible. This is awful. And it was the first time I'd ever seen a complicated interpersonal relationship, you know, without the Disney lens, without that, you know, the Nutty Professor was as deep as I'd ever gone. And nothing wrong with the Nutty Professor, but I was so caught up in the story. I was so vested in these characters that I was stricken and overcome to the point of tears. And not even, you know, not even the slight allergies, you know, kind of those dismissive kind of moments. And in retrospect, I can picture my dad sitting in his easy chair. And there's some gentlemen in the room. I'm sure there's some dads in the room. I'm a dad. And I'm going to reveal a little bit, this is a dad trade secret, but every dad has some form of the dad list. Every dad has a dad list. And I can picture my dad sitting next to me and just regarding his young son, just bawling at this cheesy movie of the week, and taking out his imaginary dad list and just thinking, football scholarship, no. Basketball, no. Around here it would be, you know, hockey, no. And as a result of that, not just that, but probably a lot of nights like that, my dad actually encouraged me to go into the arts. So I became a writer, which I think that's a real leap of faith for a parent, because I have a son who's really good at music, wants to major in music, and I'm encouraging him, but there's a part of me that's like, be a dentist, be a dentist. Please be a dentist. Let it be a fad. But it was. He sent me into the arts. And so I like to say, you know, I scored a writer's touchdown, Dad. And I go to school the next day, and everyone at school is calling me James at 15. They're like, hey, James at 15. Because they all had one channel too, right? We all saw the same movie. But they hated it. I loved that movie. And in a textbook moment of peer pressure collapse, I just took that memory, I boxed it up, I packed it, I stored it away in the attic of my mind, never to look at again. And I didn't think about that moment for decades until I was fumbling around with this thing called fiction. Because it's hard. It's hard when you have, there's so many things you can write about. Are there any other authors in the room, aspiring, others, or otherwise? Oh, there's gotta be. It's terrible. I go to high schools and I'm like, are there any writers in the room? And you get like 3 kids that are like, who are the football players? It's like, oh yeah, right here. We're the sheepish people in the world sometimes. But when you're a writer, whether you write poetry or prose or fiction or memoir or screenplays or song lyrics, whatever you write, it's like being given a box of 1,000,000 crayons, and you have to decide what colors you're going to draw with. And at this point in my life, I was trying them all out. And I'm half Chinese on my dad's side, and I'd never written anything with Asian American characters because I didn't think anybody cared. And I read a lot of history, but I didn't think anything historical was what I should be writing about. I saw that as the scholarly realm of nonfiction, and I didn't belong there. And as you'll come to know, I do have kind of a deep, abiding weakness for love stories. But I'm a dude. I'm a guy, and it's hard. I didn't go there either. But where I did go about this time was with my then fiance, now wife, is we went to one of these weekends for newly engaged couples, which, that alone is a weird social experiment. It's very cruel, because you go to one of these weekends, and it's like high school all over again. You walk in, you're instantly judging everybody. You're like, oh man, I give them 6 months, And you look at the other couples, you're like, I know who the gold digger is in the room. And for us, it was even more so, because we walk in, and we were like the chaperones on prom night. We were so much older than everybody else. Everyone was still in college, or just out of college. And what the host had us do was stand up and tell the Cliff's Notes version of how we first met. And so I'm not joking. This sterling young gentleman stands up and he turns to his fiancée and he says, and I quote, "Well, I woke up and she had my t-shirt on. Figured I better ask her what her name was." Yeah, it was very romantic. My wife fainted, I'm fanning her, the heavens parted, and doves flew, and it went around the room, and everyone's first date was like spring break, or a frat party, or there was a cake stand, or Jello shooters were involved, and it came around to me, but at this point of the day, I'm looking for the exit, because I had to stand in front of this very young crowd, in front of this post-collegiate coupling experiment, and confess to them that I met my wife at that hotbed of swinging singles activity known as the public library.